Hello everyone, welcome back to Cybertix. On day 22 of TryHackMe Advent of Cyber, finally we are going to learn one of the part of penetration testing. Yes, today we are going to understand and exploit SSRF vulnerability. So without wasting any time, let's get started. So let's get started with our day 22 and let's learn about SSRF vulnerability. Before that, we will understand the scenario of today's task as the elves try to recover the compromised server. 𝙤𝒐𝙞𝒏 SOC teams identify abnormal activity and notice that a massive amount of data is being sent to an unknown server. An insider has likely created a malicious backdoor. 𝙤𝒐𝙤𝒏 has contacted Detective Frosty from law enforcement to help them. Can you assist Detective Frost in the taking down the command and control server, that is C2 servers? So today our learning objectives will be understand the server side request forgery, that is SSRF vulnerability, which different types of SSRF are used to exploit the vulnerability, prerequisites to exploit these vulnerabilities, and how this particular attack works, and how we can exploit this vulnerability, and obviously we have to understand the mitigations also. So let's just get started with our what do we mean by SSRF. SSRF or server-side request forgery is a security vulnerability that occurs when attacker tries to web application into making unauthorized requests to internal or external resources on the server behalf. This allows an attacker to interact between the internal server as well as the potential leading to the data exposure or unauthorized actions. Leaving web applications vulnerable to SSRF can perform security implications, potentially leading to unauthorized access to internal systems and might cause a remote code execution vulnerability also. So there are total three types of SSRF attacks. We can see the first one is the basic SSRF. In the basic SSRF attack, the attacker sent a crafted request to the vulnerable server to internal or external resources. For example, they might attempt to access file on the local file system, internal services, or databases that are not intended to be publicly accessible. Blind SSRF. In a blind SSRF attack, the SSRF doesn't directly see the response to the request. Instead, they may interfere in information about the internal network by measuring the time. It takes time for the server to respond or observing error message changes. And there will be a third type, that is a semi-blind SSRF. So in semi-blind SSRF, again, the attacker does not receive direct responses in the browser or the applications. However, they rely on the indirect clues, side channel informations, or observable effects within the applications to determine the success or failure of the SSRF request. This involves monitoring changes in the application behavior, response timing, and error messages like that. So, what are the prerequisites for the exploitations? First one is vulnerable input points. Okay, so web application must have input fields susceptible to for the manipulation such as URL equal to or file upload functionalities also. Lack of input validation. The application should have adequate input validations or effective sanitization mechanism, allowing an attacker to craft malicious request also. So how this SSRF vulnerability works? First, identifying vulnerable input. The attacker locates an input field within the application that can be manipulated or trigger server-side request. This could be a URL parameter in the web form or an API endpoint or a request parameter input such as a referral headers. Okay. Now the second part, manipulating the input. The attacker inputs a malicious URL or the payload that cause the application to make intended request. These inputs could be a URL pointing to the internal server or looping back address or an external server under the attacker's control. Third one, request unauthorized resources. The application server, unaware of the malicious input, makes a request to the specified URL or those resources. This request could target internal resources, sensitive services, or external systems as well. The fourth one and the last one is about exploiting the response. Depending on the application's behavior and the attacker's payload, the response from the malicious request may provide valuable information such as internal server data, credentials, system credentials or informations, or the pathway for the further exploitations. So Let's get start with our SSRF to hack with our command and control server. So Detective Frostu checked the C2 again, known vulnerabilities, but none of them worked. He decided to give a SSRF a shot. Now that we know about SSRF works, can you help Detective Frostu take down the C2 server? Yes, we can help them out. So let's, as we have started the machine, so before that we have to go to the terminal over here, and then we have to type a command because we have to support a C2 server over here. So let's just get into that. So we have to try over here, that is let's just perform a sudo su command over here, and let's see. Okay, we are already root. So nano and slash etc slash host. Okay, or else control x. Okay, I guess we had not entered a host spelling over here. Yes, and we have to type over here following the IP of our machine, 10.10.44.101, and then just press a tab over here, and then we have to get back to the command control server, and let me just copy it down and paste it, and hit control O, enter control X. Okay, cool. Now we had already entered, so let me just open it. Yes, and we can see that our C2 server has been hosted, but we don't know about the username and password over here. But there is one documentation of the API, you can check it out. So let me just open it in a new tab over here. So manipulating the input, Max Kitty noticed a link of the documentation at the bottom of the page. Once we click on the URL, it redirects to the endpoints of the API. Now that we have some URLs, we can try an SSRF attacks against them. So first one, how can I access the API to fetch data from an agent? You just need an you just need to visit the endpoint, the machine IP, get data client URL is equal to the IP of the client and the name of the file which you want to access. That's like a suspicious for the SSRF vulnerability, right? So requesting for the unauthorized access of the resources, we can see that one of the endpoint, that is which we had discussed, takes the URL as a parameter. If an infected agent URL is provided to it, it will fetch all the files from the infected agent. But what if we change the URL parameter to the different IP and try to access the other files? So exploiting the response. Now we have noticed that if we change the URL parameter to any of the other files on the host, we can still fetch the files over here. So let me just copy the command and paste the URL, and we can see the particular IP address which we had given over here, that is the client IP address and then machine IP address over here. But instead of that, we had accessing a file triple slash with this where www.php internal files, that is the index.php, and we can see a php file over here with the username and the password. But to get the username and password, what if there is an access of the config.php? So let me just type it over here, config.php. Yes, we had got the username and password. So let me just log in into that, copy, paste, and then again copy and paste it over here. Let's just get sign in, don't save. And you can see that we had just got into the C2 server of the TryHackMe. And yes, and we can see a proper dashboard over here. So what are the mitigation features, measures we can perform in the SSRF over here? To prevent SSRF exploitation, following mitigations are suggested by the TryHackMe. Employing strict input validations and sanitizing to prevent malicious input, allowing users to list controls with the domains and the IP the application can access, that is while listing the domains. Applying the network segmentation to restrict requests to the authorized resources. Following are the principles of least privileges. Granting the minimum permissions required for the system operations. Cool. So let's just solve our task. In SSRF, the process in which attacker tries the server into loading only external resources. It's not about just external resources. We can also access the internal resources also. So let me just type over here. Nay. Yes. What is the C2's version? Okay, let me just check it out over here. It's 1.1 over here. So let me type it 1.1. Yes, what is the username of the accessing of the C2 banner? So as we know, the username was MacGreedy. So let me just copy it. what is the flag value after accessing the C2 panel. So at the top you can see the flag over here. So let me just copy it down. Yes, what is the flag value after stopping the data exfiltration from the 𝙤𝒐𝙞𝒏 computer. So you can see there is a hack user information, the name of the PCs and the status, is this syncing or not, and there is actions over here. So we have to remove the 𝙤𝒐𝙞𝒏 PC. Let me just remove it. Are you sure? Yes. Yes, and we had got the flag over here, so let me just copy it down. Yes, we had solved the today's task over here, and we had learned about the different types of SSRF vulnerabilities also. So in the today's task of TryHackMe, we had come to know the different types of SSRF vulnerabilities and how we can exploit them, and of course, what are the mitigations we can apply to prevent these vulnerabilities. Please make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and let's get started with our hunting for the SSRF vulnerability in our bug bounty journey.